Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm just going to pop through and do some basic UI stuff. This will kind of be the first part of a lab, and then the second part of it is going to be, for the same week, making some assets that are going to go in here. I'll provide some resources about different Illustrator tutorials you can use to make your 3D assets. And there's also a video from last week that will step you through how to make it able to run on your device simply through sorry for the beeping, my cord's a little janky, through connecting it to your computer and opening a program called Unity Remote. I just realized I was holding it off screen, but it's here. Yeah, there it goes. So you'll be running an app called Unity Remote 5, and all you need to do is connect your phone to the PC, open Unity Remote 5, and then in project settings, in the editor, you can have a Unity Remote section where, for me, it's any iOS device, but you should see an any Android device symbol as well, as long as when you installed Unity, you told it to do it with Android or iOS build included, build capabilities. If you pop over to that lecture I did last week, it's a couple minutes long. I stepped through like how to do that if you forgot to do it or if you didn't do it. So yeah, cool. Let's pop in. I'm just going to talk a little bit about canvases. This is kind of our, like I said, a bit of our first section of the lab for week 2. I'm going to make myself a new game object, and I'm going to call it menu controller. Typically when you make menus in games, they're all kind of juggled by the same canvas, so that you only have one canvas, and he knows the general state of things, like he knows what menu should be open, what panel, and you can open and close panels as he sees fit. Well, we probably won't be using it today, but if we go into scripts, I'll go into lab 2 here, create a folder. I don't know if I want to call it lab 2 in scripts, because we might use it in future weeks. So I'll just say UI, scripts, UI. Boom. I'm going to add a C# script in here, and I'm going to call it menu controller. If this were, I'm just thinking about my naming conventions. I think I'm happy with this. This is fine. I'm going to pop over here. Whoops. Well, it's opening it. Boom. Let me close these out because we don't need them for this week. Boom. Menu controller. I don't need these, so I'm going to delete the start and update. Just make sure that you don't accidentally delete your open and close brackets for the function itself, or the class itself. Start and update are the functions. That's why I misspoke. And I'm just going to plop menu controller onto the menu controller object. Probably won't be using it today, but in case I feel inspired, maybe I will, for funsies. Then I'm going to add a UI canvas, and I'm going to call it menu controller canvas, and he's going to have a lot of sub canvases or probably sub panels within him. And you see this event system. Event systems are how UI works in Unity. When I click on something, the event system is the thing that takes the click, they call it a raycast, or they draw a line from wherever I clicked with my finger or with a mouse. They draw it out and they say, did it hit any event capable elements? Those are, for example, a canvas. There usually is a graphic raycaster on them, and that graphic raycaster is the thing that says, hey, I can be hit, these are my dimensions, and when I'm hit I can do something. And the buttons and all those types of things are what control what is done. Anyway, since I have an empty game object called menu controller that has a canvas within it, I feel safe putting the event system inside of the menu controller. And then I'm going to make a prefabs folder. Prefabs. A prefab in Unity is sort of a saved instance or a saved setup of some sort of scripts and game objects and all that thing, so that when you might want to make another one, it's easy. For example, if I had a bunch of enemies in the game, I'm not going to uniquely make 1,000 enemies. I'm going to, especially if they're all the same, I'm going to have a prefab of one enemy and just create that prefab through code and spawn it. You know, that's how you spawn an enemy, is if you have that enemy saved, what he looks like, and you create him a bunch of times. So a prefab is like a saved game object so that I can use it many times. If I drag it in again, boom, now I have a menu controller 1 and it looks exactly the same. So I got my menu controller, and my menu controller is a prefab, so that if I want to spawn it or despawn my UI, I can. Like if you're in a loading screen or something and you want to take it away. If I want to edit that prefab directly, you don't edit it in the scene like this, like changing stuff around, because now that it's a prefab, it has saved elements on the inside of it. I want to go edit the prefab itself. I could do that by double-clicking this, or by clicking the little arrow here. Boom. So now I'm actually editing the prefab itself. I could have also double-clicked this, and I'll go to the same spot. You'll notice that now it says menu controller up here, and not like hierarchy or whatever. It'd say the name of the scene, I would assume. So if I hit back, yeah, it says the name of the scene at the top. So I'm double-clicking this, or I'm clicking here. Since I clicked here last time, I'll double-click this now. Boom. Now I'm editing the prefab, and I know I'm editing the prefab, and we're all good. So, popping into that menu canvas, I want to make let me see if I can zoom out here. Scene. So this is my prefab. Z is forward, and it's pointing that way. So I'm just going to orient myself from this direction. I'm tapping F, by the way, to kind of get a better zoom in on it. And so that when I hold Alt and move my camera around, I'm kind of moving from a pivot. Anyway, what do I want in my menu system? So canvases in Unity, they are kind of percentage-based, anchor-based. So when I place an element in my UI, it has pixel sizes and all that kind of thing. But a pixel size isn't very helpful when you have elements that can be shown on many different screens. Like, you know, how many Android devices are there that this could show on? So if you try to offset your image, so like I'll add a button here, for example, UI button. So now I have a new button. If I were to say, okay, I am going to be in, I want to be 300 units there and 500 units there, and then I want to be, I want to be toward the top of the screen. So okay, oh, I'm stupid. To negative 500. Okay, now it's the top half of the screen, and I got a thing. So the problem with that is when I change my monitor size, like if I were to be playing on a different phone, it looks great in Editor. Maybe it looks great on this particular version of phone that I'm running, but if I were to keep like changing my aspects, you see how like sometimes it might be getting cut off. Sometimes you don't even see half the element. Sometimes, yeah, it just gets wonky based on how you are viewing it, and that's why we use anchors instead of strict pixel placement. I'm trying to remember which one I actually want to do. Probably that one. I'd have to Google the actual dimensions of an iPhone 8. I'm not particularly sure of it off the top of my head because they're all different. But it doesn't really matter. I'm going to instead take my UI and make it anchor-based. So this button in particular is going to be the button you hit to open the options panel. So usually those are in the top right, top left. Let's search for some mobile UI, game UI example. I'm popping over here. I'm just looking for some inspiration. I see, okay, top right. That's got top right. Oh, that's bottom right there. So yeah, one of the corners, because that's where your thumb is naturally going to go, but it's not taking up space in the center play area. That's very typical. And I'm just looking around, seeing. this is what you should do too. When you want to do something, you okay, what do other games in my genre do? And you know, options are generic enough that every game's going to have it. So, okay, so this is the main menu in Pudding Monsters. That's a good name. Pudding Monsters, the main menu. It has, you know, bottom center. That's cool. You know, it's grouping those elements together that are kind of other than play. So you have the play is the big beefy button because that's what you want your users to do. You want them to play the game. And then you have some alternative, like, oh, maybe you want to sync with Facebook. Maybe you want to edit some options, like change your language, or maybe you want to look at the leaderboards. Cool. Oh, I like this. I'm going to save that for later. Okay, so yeah, let's do bottom right corner. Bottom right corner. So instead of doing it through pixel placement, I'm going to do it like this. Boom. Go to the bottom right. And what that's actually doing is saying my anchors, let me just double check I'm honest. My anchors, it says it's 0.5, 0.5. Now it's 1, 1. My anchor is getting moved to the far right. 0 is left, right is 1. And I want my Y to be, I feel like I want it, am I upside down? I might be upside down. I believe this is correct orientation. I notice that my green is pointing up, and I know that 0 is the bottom and 1 is the top. So I want it to be bottom right. That would be anchors are 1, 1, 0, 0 for the 0 for the Y, 1 for the X, and that's because the anchors are based on your full screen's perspective, or in childed elements, the perspective or the resolution of the sub window. So it's based on the anchors of its parent's size, and the parent in this case is your game screen or the resolution of your phone. So bottom right corner, cool. And if I were to zero out my position and my height here, you'll notice that it is indeed in the bottom right corner. Top left puts me in the top left if I were to zero out. And I believe I can hold Alt and Shift to, yep, Alt and Shift will place me there. You'll notice that it also, when I held Alt and Shift, it made it so it doesn't go to the center of the object. That's because before the pivot was in the middle. The pivot is the pivot of the element. So my element, his interpreted center, is here. But much like in animation, when you go, oh, I want my pivot to be the feet of the character, so when he walks along, he's walking along with his feet first as a root. Sometimes in UI animation, you don't want the root to be the center of the object, you want the root to be somewhere else on the object, so it's easier to animate and easier to position. So I want my pivot to be the bottom right corner, which would be 1, 0. I believe it would be 1, 0. Let's find out. So that's 1 and 0. And I already noticed that my elements, it went to the bottom right, that symbol, so I know that I'm correct. Boom, boom. And now I have my button in the bottom right-hand corner. Obviously, I want it to be more of a square, so I'll make it 100 by 100 pixels. And this, depending on the size of your screen, you might hit issues of like, oh, looks 100 pixels is really small on my phone. If that's the case, and you want, you also have the option of making it percentage based. So instead of my anchors being from 1 to 1 here and making it, an exact point, I can make it from 0.9 to 1 on the X. So 0.9 and then 1. And then on the Y, instead of 0 and 0, I'd make it 0 and, I don't know, 0.1. And that would make it take up a region. So regardless of your monitor size, it's always taking up 10% of the bottom of the screen, because 0.9 to 0.1, or 0.9 to 1. So that would make sure that it always stays a consistent size. For me today, I'm in a forgiving mood. I'm going to make it an exact pixel size of 100 and 100, or because art usually is in powers of 2 to reduce the what's the word I'm looking for? Rasterization, like when it's trying to render an image to a device or to a monitor. if it's not in a power of 2, it has to kind of stretch it out to meet the difference, just because how monitor resolutions work. So having a 100 by 100 image sometimes it is not probable. Nobody's going to give you an asset that's 128 or that's 100 by 100, because the way that you save a PNG always is benefited by powers of 2. I can go into that more if people are interested. And now it's pause X, pause Y. I don't want it to be right at the corner. I want it to be a little off. So now I can do a little pixel offset for the fine positioning, the fine tuning. So negative, I don't know, 20 and 20. And now I've got myself a cornered element that's not based solely on pixel placement. It's based on anchors and then pixels for making sure that everything looks nice. So let's look at that in my game. I'm going to hit play. I'm curious if I can click on it yet. Oh, I heard some disconnect noises. Oh, and whoop. I got to get myself a new chord. So let's hit play. Did we work? It didn't work because this stupid cable. I'm going to close Unity Remote, open it again, press play. Let's go to Edit, Preferences. Ooh, I meant to say Build Settings, any iOS device. Okay, I believe that means it sees it. I'm going to hit play. It was working before I started my my screen, of course. But lo and behold, I can click it. I'll fight with this stupid thing later. In fact, why don't I fight with it now? It's a learning experience. Popping back into my game here. I am saving, just making sure everything is saved. Closing out. Every day I say, oh, I'll get that new iPhone cable tomorrow. Okay, so I've opened up Unity Remote. I am going to my Unity here, and let's open that up. I was kind of interested by that name, Cave Boy. That is cute. Okay, if I press play, will it just work? Nope. Let's go to my game settings. If it keeps not working, I will deal with it later. Oops, 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 oops. Edit project settings. Oh. Yep, doesn't see it. So now I will close it, unplug, replug. Boom. Any iOS, oh, it sees it. It sees it. Okay. Play. And okay, yeah. Just kind of click on the button. I can click on the button. You see how it's flashing there when I press down? It's becoming a little darker. So click, click, and that's because I'm clicking it on my phone. And as you can see on my phone UI, let me see if I can see that on my screen here. Yeah, it's not the same resolution, but you know, it's in the bottom right hand corner and has some pixel offset, and it's working. And gotta get that. Gotta get a new one. Okay, I might even have a new cable in the office. And we'll see. We'll see. Cool. So let's continue. So we have this little little guy down there, and when I press him, he opens he will open a menu. So let's put that button, instead of just being right inside of menu canvas, I'm going to create an empty object here. I'm going to call it main game screen or play screen. This is the screen that's like happening while you're playing your game, where you might want to open up your options. And I'm just kind of thinking about what I want to call it. I'm going to call it play panel, because usually I call everything panels. And play panel, I don't want it to be, I'm going to go to my scene view here so you appreciate what's wrong. Play panel, why is it always coming in upside down? That's weird. play panel is, you'll notice it looks like a little, I'm pressing T, by the way. If you hit W, it gives you like a 3D world view, but if you hit T, it gives you the dimensions of your current object. So you notice that play panel is only 100 by 100 pixels big because it's not set to the full object. I will do that, but I'd first like to show that thing I was mentioning earlier about anchors being to their parent. So if I put this inside the play panel, and then I zero out these positions again, because remember, it is anchored to a location, but it tries to retain its last position. So its last position was down there. I'm going to set it to 0. And now it's set to the bottom right-hand corner. So if I move it off of its X, it kind of goes away from the corner, and Y, it goes away from the corner. If I were to scale it up and down, like I'm going to, boom. If I scale it up and down, it scales up and down from the corner. But it's the parent object is not sized to the appropriate size, which is the screen size. How big is my actual screen? So I could do that two ways. I could set my X from 0 to 1, and my Y from 0 to 1, and then zero out everything else. And that has made me the size of the screen, because from a percentage standpoint, I'm going from 0 to 1 on both, and then I am zeroing out my offsets. That's how you do it. Or, you know, the quick way is holding Alt and Shift and then clicking that bottom right-hand box, because that's telling it to stretch to both dimensions. To both dimensions. Now my play button, I believe I had a 20 pixel offset on both sides, except negative 20 because it's on the right hand side. Cool. And here we are. It still looks the same. Good, but it's inside of a play panel. Play panel, this is going to be some future work, but if we go inside of UI, not only do we have a menu panel, menu controller, but a menu controller controls a series of menus, right? So I'm going to make myself a C# script called menu panel. Each panel is going to have a class called panel. So I'm going to have a play panel, and he's going to be of a panel. A panel can open and close. We'll do this eventually. Void public void open panel, so that any panel can open and any panel can, you guessed it, close. Boom. And just to keep track of things, when I open a panel, I would expect that I would turn myself on, and that to do that, Bob, phrasing, right? Turn myself on. To do that, I would to set myself visible. There's a better way to say it. To do that, I reference myself with a lowercase g game object. Last week, you saw a transform dot position. That is getting my own transform. And today, we're referencing game object dot set visible, set active. I do Unity and Unreal work, so I get a little confused sometimes, but we're all good. True. And what are you going to do when you close panel? You guessed it, false. So whenever he's told to open, he'll open. Whenever he's told to close, he'll close. And we'll do a bool is open, and I opened it with an underscore as a programmer thing in my head. Underscore means that nobody else can reference this variable but me. It's mine. And I start closed, and then I'll eventually open. Let me just double check myself here. I'm thinking out loud. When I am set to open, then is open would naturally become true. When I'm set to close, is open would naturally be set to false. And now that boom and boom. Now that I have a boolean, which is a true-false value, that is always tracking whether or not I should be open, I don't need to hard code set active true. I can say set active to is open. And now that these are both doing the same thing, I could technically make a third method, because they call it copy pasta. I'm doing the same thing in two different spots. I'm setting active to is open. And if you do that enough, and then you have to change something down the line, then you have to change everywhere where you've done it. So usually you would break this out into its own method, but I'm not getting into the weeds because that's not what this lecture is about, or this lab. Okay, so now we have an open and a closed panel. It'll turn itself on and off. And just to be fancy, I'm going to add a void awake, which happens right when it's turned on, right when it's activated, because if we forget to turn off every UI before we start, then it would have a boolean is open set to false, even though it's technically open. So I'm going to say is open equals game object dot active self. Let's find out. So see that one says deprecated, so I don't want to use that. That is not deprecated, but it's in the hierarchy, not of itself. So I'm going to say active self. Yeah, boom. Active self. So now, right when he wakes up, he'll figure out if he's actually currently open or not. Because otherwise, it would be an inaccurate boolean. Since if you left the object on when you started playing, then even though it's set to false by default, it would actually be open. So that's why I am doing this. Okay, so awake, he sets that guy, we're all good, boom. And so now play panel, he's a menu panel, and we're going to have options panel, create empty, options panel. And we're going to do the same thing again. I'm trying to figure out why it's grayed out a little bit. Usually that happens because I'm focused on a particular element. Oh, is it just a gray background? I think it's just a gray background. I think I'm just crazy. And we have the same problem where it's like, oh, it's not taking up the whole screen. So I'm going to hold Alt and Shift, and I'm going to hit there. Maybe you don't want to take up the whole screen. With an options panel, that's feasible. Maybe you only want it to be 50% of the screen. But I like to start with the full screen and then go down from there in the children. Okay. Alrighty then. So now we have a play panel and an options panel. The options panel will feasibly be open when you press the options button in the play panel. This button here, zoom in. You're not going to say button, you're going to say options. Because when I press it, I want to open it. Options panel. He needs to be of type menu panel. Huh. And he's going to have some elements inside of him. Let me turn off play panel just to give myself better visibility. I learned this last week from one of you guys. If I hit the little eyeball here, it turns it off in the editor, but not in the game, which is useful. But I'm grumpy and old, so I'm going to do it like this. All right, so now we have this options panel, and I want there to be a window within it that represents the options panel, naturally. So I usually do things by nesting, so that when, because I'm a bird, no, so that when I have objects and I want to move them, they all move at the same time. So I generally always drill down. I never have two objects at the same height unless they should be, like if I'm animating something and they need to move separately from one another. Okay, so first step is to create, I already have an empty object and that represents my panel. So maybe this will be the panel. A panel is exactly like an empty object except it has an image on it, which is just a default background. But I don't want that panel to be the full screen. I want that panel to be maybe, I want it to be centered, I know that. So I want it on the Y, I definitely want it to be something like on the X, excuse me, like 0.2 to 0.8, so 4 on either side, percentage points, 40. And on the Y, I want it to be, I don't know, you'll notice these little guys are moving as I move those around. I want it to be squishier, I want it to be squatter, I want it to be maybe from the bottom, I want it to be like 20% up, 0.2 and 0.8. And so now I've made it the same dimensions on all sides, and I'm going to zero these out. I'm just hitting tab, by the way, to go to the next thing. And so now that's my panel. It's going to be a small part of the screen. I could make it bigger, I could make it smaller. And this assumes a portrait mode thing. And the reason I'm doing this is because, you know, mostly when you have an option screen, you have looking around for one. Yeah, like it takes up a portion of the screen. It's not the whole screen, so that it feels like an overlay that you can get rid of. But Justin, it doesn't look like an overlay because we wanted to kind of obscure what's behind it. That'd look cool. So at the same level of the hierarchy, I'm going to add an image. I'm going to make it take up the whole screen by holding Alt-Shift and hitting there, or by setting 0, 1, 0, 1, and then zeroing out these guys. And because things render in order of when they appear, I'm going to drag this image behind. And this image is a background type of thing, overlay type of thing. So I'm going to call it BG_overlay for background overlay. I'm going to color it black. And I'm going to make it semi-transparent, like 0.2, 0.1. So when this menu is up, oh, maybe 0.2, 0.3, yeah. So now it fades out the things behind it. So if we were in game, I'm going to drag in, where's my camera? So here's our camera. I'm just going to drag in a cube to show what I'm talking about. 3D object cube. I'm going to move him back a little bit. But I put the, oh, whoops, I put the cube in the camera. Example cube. You don't need to do this part. I'm just showing what I mean. So now I have this object here, and moving it back a little more so it's not so like in the way. So now, you see that cube down there. Now when I go back to the game, there's kind of additional user feedback from it becoming brighter. I might even go more. I might even go like the panel, maybe I even have it as a full opaqueness. And the overlay, I have it as like 0.4. Make it more extreme. 0.8. It might be a little much. I just wanted to feel nice. I don't know. So then, like, when it appears, I could do something cute. If I put my game like this over here, and then I go to my scene view, back over here, and I take my menu controller and I kind of scroll it, squish it. That's actually not appearing on that side. That's no fun. I think maybe if I do it from here. Yeah, see how you can like whoop, and like it overlays the background. So that's why sometimes I like having a little dark background. It doesn't always need to be there, but it's nice. All right, and now we're going back into the editing of the menu controller. And remember, this is a prefab, so I'm going into the prefab by clicking on this. Boop. Otherwise, you're just editing the instance, and then if you make another version of the UI, then it wouldn't look the same. And if you ever do find yourself accidentally editing this instance, you can just right-click and apply to prefab. If I were to make changes, I believe that's a thing I can do. I haven't done it in a while because I'm perfect and I always remember to edit this. That's not true. Okay. Anyway, so I have my element, my options panel, and he has a BG overlay, and I'll call this FG panel for foreground and background. And inside the FG panel, I'll add another button, UI button. And we're going to place it just like before, except in the top right. So So we're going to put it up in the top right like that. And I believe if I hold Alt, it'll change the pivot point as well to being the top right of the element. But I'll just do without holding any button. I'm just going to click up there. Moves up there. I'm going to zero out my elements. And then I go, oh, it's, you know, centered. So I want it to, on the X, be 1 to be its far right. And on the Y, be 1 to be its top corner. So that's all correct, I think. In my head it's correct, but on paper it looks wrong. Oh, and I want my pivot. Yeah, I meant to talk about my pivot. Yeah, I meant to talk about my pivot, not the anchors. Might be, because these are the anchors. Boom, that changes your anchors. And then I want my pivot to be 1 and 1. Yeah, now that looks like the correct pivot once I've zeroed off my position. I want it to be a square as well, so I'm going to say, I don't know, 100 by 100. Boom, boom. Or 128 by 128, because that's probably the size of the texture I'm getting, or 56 by 56. Doesn't super matter. What really matters is the art coming in are units of 2, so that when Unity is trying to compress it, it doesn't get blurry. The size of it once it's in game is pretty flexible. I assume that I'm getting a unit of 2, so I'm reflecting that here. I'm just going to make it have a letter X in it because it's going to close this window. Boom. And now, as you can see up here, there's a little X. Maybe I'll make the font a little bigger. It's already centered, that's good. I'm going to make the font 28. I could also say fit to best fit, and that'll size it up. You guys are going to be putting in some art. Okay, so now that we have some basic art in here, or some basic button in here, I'm going to then again move it a little off, I don't know, 10 and negative 10. Actually, is it positive, positive? Might be positive top. Negative 10, 10. Boom. Oh, that's what's wrong. I'm moving the text instead of the button. I was like, oh, I would have expected that to work. Negative 10 and negative 10. So now it's offset from the top corner. We're looking good. I'm going to make the button's color red. And I need to make everything else kind of match that as well, so that when I'm highlighting it, maybe it's a darker red, or so it's dark red, but then when I highlight it, it gets a little brighter. When I press it, maybe it gets a little whiter, like it's hot. I call it get hot when you bump up the sat. Selected color, that's when I've clicked on it. After I've clicked on it, I'll have it stay the normal color. So I'll need to deal with that, and probably the best way to do that is hit this little eyedropper and click on this. The disabled color, sure, gray, if you're not allowed to leave for some reason. I'm going to go to my text object here, set the color to where's my color? There's my color. To white to make it a little more obvious. Cool. And I forget if Unity supports shadow just right in here. It does not. So I'm going to add component. I believe it's just called shadow. Yeah, I could do that, or I believe there's an outline as well. I'll do outline. Zoom in on it. As you can see, it's already there. Boom, boom. I'm going to make it like 5, negative 5, 2, negative 2, negative 2, and 2. That's okay. Let me try shadow. Let me see how shadow looks. I believe shadow just pixel offsets in a direction. Yeah, so maybe 2, negative 2. Oh, negative 2. Or I could just make it go straight to the right. Like that. I don't know. I don't know. What do I like more? Hard to say. So that's looking pretty good. I got my close button. I'm going to press play, see what it looks like. Boom. Am I still connected? Oh, I'm still connected. Gotta be very careful. There it is. So as you can see, I do see my window. I have a little X button there. If I tap it, do I see a tap in here? Let's find out. You see how it's getting brighter? Boom. Alright, so we're looking good. Naturally, the resolution is a little lower because it's actually like streaming the video to here. So it's not going to look beautiful. But once we sort out how to build two devices and I get a feel for what devices you guys are actually building from, we'll be good to go to actually make you able to run it there. And like getting through the fees and stuff, because if you're on Apple, then it costs like $100 or something to become a developer. Anyway, so now that we have our other menu, we have two menus in total. We have, well, two panels in total. We have our options panel and we have our game panel. And the game is just not updating as fast as the scene. But not to worry, because that should be here anyway. Anyway, okay, so we've got our objects here. And when I want to set it up so that when I press on the button here, which is going to be the options button, options, BTN, or BTN options, you'll notice I do that type of thing a lot. Doesn't really matter. And the other one is going to be the BTN underscore close. Maybe even close options. The reason I do this is so that when I want to find all my buttons, I just do that and I find all my buttons. And the reason I might call it button underscore close options is so that if I have multiple close buttons, because you have like an options panel and an avatar customization panel, and they all have close buttons, and I would see 1,000 button closes and I wouldn't know which one I want. So that's why I might call it button underscore close close options. It's just so I know later what it is when I'm looking at it. Okay, so we've got that set up. I go to my button options here and I open up button. I say, okay, on click, I want it to do two things. I want it to open the options panel. So I dragged in options panel. I want to access its game object, and I want to set it active to false, or true. But I made a menu panel script, which can do the same thing. And it's going to be open panel. Open panel. Boom. And the reason that this is better than just turning off and on game objects is because open panel might do other things, like load the previous preferences. Like if they set their volume level, then now I can go to the save system and find where my volume is, and I can set game object active to true. I can do more than just setting the game object. I'll need to set it all up in here. And I'll do the same thing for play panel. So play panel, when my play panel's options button is clicked, then I feasibly want to close this panel and open the other. So I'm going to say close the play panel and open the options panel. And I'm going to do the inverse on button close of the options. Button close of the options is I need two elements. First I need to first I need to close the options panel. Boom. And it's able to see close panel because it's a public method. Just make sure in your code that you made it public and public. Maybe serializable would also work, but make it public. Make your life easier and make it public. I think I still need one thing. Yep. Close that panel and open the play panel again. Boom. The other thing, like, so for example, I would have open panel for the menu of the play screen, because maybe it also needs to say load the last score, because maybe there's a score in the top corner, and when you've left the screen and come back, saying open panel tells it, oh, I need to load all that stuff again. So that's why it's important to separate specific functions from the buttons. Like the button doesn't actually go in and turn on and off a bunch of stuff. He just tells other people, he gives them suggestions about what they should do, like, hey, play panel, can you try opening? Okay, and then like take care of whatever it is you need to do. I don't need to care about anything else. I just say open panel. So boom. Now I'm going to hit play. Options panel is closed and play panel is open. So when I press play, I should see that, which tells me I edited this guy. So that means that I accidentally edited this object outside of editing my, let me just go in here. Right. So that means that I edited my prefab, or my game instance of the prefab as opposed to the actual prefab. And that's why it's annoying to edit this thing by mistake. Yes, I think I could like hit right click and revert all values to prefab and all that type of thing. I know that's an option somewhere. Prefab, yeah, revert all. I could have done that, and it reverts anything I accidentally changed. Usually, and if I hit select here, it'll jump right to the prefab it's using. Just to be sure I'm not crazy, I'm just dragging that back in. You don't have to do that. So now, if I were to hit play, am I zoomed in? Yeah, I am. Okay. Scale should be, oh weird, I'd expect it to let me go to 0, but we're dealing with it. So now if I press on this guy, boop, it opened that up. And if I press on this guy, boop, it went back to the main screen. And now I'm going to do it on my phone. Options, ha. And close, ha. Nice. It's looking good. Looking good. That's using that Unity Remote 5. It's handy to let you know what it's going to look like on device. But if you make UI like this, where you actually do make everything anchored instead of pixel positioned, then even if you're not working on device, you still have a much better idea than how it would be otherwise. And then I think you can also add, like, if you know your specific phone's resolution, then you can add it. Anyway. So that is part 1 of the lab. I hope that showed you how to do some good stuff. Part 2 of this lab, which you should do immediately after, I believe, I haven't fully decided on it. I'm going to get you guys feeling on it on Friday. Then I'm going to have you watch a few tutorials for making in-game UI, and then I'm going to have you customize and make these screens. Go in and make these screens and retain that behavior so you can still close and open. So it's kind of, I gave you the tools, and then now it's up to you to plop in elements. There are some things that you'll need to know about, such as sliced textures. So let me open up Paint here. So when you have a button, and you don't know how big that button's going to be, because remember, I position this by percentage, then you don't want a texture that's literally your button. You want a texture that's repeatable. So I have my button texture, which is actually probably going to be a square of some sort. And then I tell Unity to slice it like this. And it repeats these elements over and over again until it reaches the desired width and height. And then it applies the corners at the last pixel sets. So, for example, if I go to my scene here, these buttons, let me click on you. These buttons are actually sliced textures. You can even see it down here, the dotted line. And that's why you can make the buttons any size and they don't get all weird and stretchy. So you'll probably be wanting to make a notice it's 32 by 32, a unit of 2 size. Anyway, that you'll notice, let me go to the, I want to know if I can edit it. I can't actually edit it, but usually they're squares. If you want to make your own asset and you want to make it stretchy, I invite you to work with it in that manner. If you don't want to deal with that quite yet and you're not feeling comfortable messing with it, that's fine. Just make sure that when you're interacting with your scene and you know the resolution of your button, you do one of two things. If you don't want to do the slicing and you just want it to look nice, you could either, one, actually enter in the size of your object, like, oh, I made it 256 by 128, and then if you drag in your picture here, then it'll look exactly 256 by 128. Or if you know the general area you want the button to be, but you don't know the size that would translate to, there is an option in your image. So right here. So let's say you've dragged in your image, whatever it may be. I don't know if I can drag in something else. I don't know. Knob. So I've dragged in my knob, and I say, I want you to be preserve. There's a preserve aspect. Where is it? There. And now when preserve aspect is on, even if I'm a bigger button, no matter what size I am, the image stays correct. But if you do it like that, then you might want to mess around, because now you'll notice the text is off. Though in a perfect world, you wouldn't have text. Your text, your buttons in mobile stuff are usually icons without text. They're usually like a gear if it's for options, so that it's kind of universal. No, you don't have to translate a bunch of stuff. People just know a gear is options. A floppy disk, for some people, still know is save, even though nobody's used a floppy disk in like 20 years. But yeah, so that's how you could go about that. I do invite you to research sliced textures a bit. It's really important to know, and I'm happy to talk about it as well. Maybe I will in my second recording, where I kind of talk about adding some art assets to this scene. But yeah, that was the basic setup, and then now it's up to you guys to look through Illustrator tutorials that I will provide. I'll show you a few different ones. I'll say, hey, pick a theme that you like from one of these tutorials, follow through with it, and then put it in this UI, and then make it your own. Do something fun. That's your lab. And that's the second part of the lab. But cool. All right, have a good one, guys.